Last month, while helping my mom move, I came across some journals that my grandfather, Liam, had given her. She never read them and didn't care if I took a look. Over the course of 7 journals, I learned about how he met his wife, what my mom was like as a kid, and what life had been like at a different time. I'd known about most of the major events he described, different jobs and moving to different places, and the childhood death of my Uncle James. But then there were different type of journals that stood out. It was dedicated to his time working at the lighthouse from 1920 to 1922. I'd never known he worked at a lighthouse. His father had died while he was deployed during World War I, and he used his inheritance to move to Norway, where he found a job working at a lighthouse. Most of the entries from that time were pretty normal, documenting nice weather and personal thoughts, but some of them described some unusual things that I thought I might interest you with. For brevity's sake, some of his entries were 15 pages long. I'll be condensing his passages in my own words. January 12th, 1920. Liam had been at the lighthouse for about 2 weeks and had become fast friends with his coworker, Andrew. The two of them had found time for nightly card games and bonded over the same sense of WRY humor and the love of literature, which led to the nights spent borrowing many books. The two switched shifts every week, and Liam was on the night shift. It was around 1:30, and he had heard a woman screaming outside. He ran down and searched the shore for half an hour, but couldn't find her. Quote unquote, a wretched voice, cracked with pain and desolation, hung in my ears no matter how far I searched. Her cries were always as loud as the minute before, never getting farther or closer to me. He eventually went to wake up Andrew, who seemed unconcerned, and told him to ignore the sound. Liam brushed it off as a possible joke to scare the new guy. June 2nd, 1920. Liam was filling the lamp with kerosene and chatting with Andrew before getting into bed. He was about to head down when he heard a foghorn sounding off continuously. That meant a nearby ship was in trouble. Without hesitation, Liam went for the stairs, but Andrew pulled him back. He listened for a moment and quickly refused to go. Liam was absolutely infuriated. People's lives could have been at stake if they didn't go. So they got the boat, and while they rowed across the water, Andrew kept saying they shouldn't be on the water, but refused to say why. When they finally came onto the ship, Liam quickly realized why. Nobody was on board. It was as if a ship had been set loose and drifted away. The explanation might have made sense if the nearest port wasn't around a tight bend. The two men climbed aboard, despite Andrew's desperate plea to simply turn back and leave the ship alone. And they searched the ship for any crew members and found nobody. When they returned to shore, they looked back at the ship and it had disappeared. The men did not report the incident. July 19th, 1920. My grandfather describes a nightmare that he had had. He's alone, walking on the surface of calm water, when all of a sudden it turns into a storm. Quote unquote, water was pulling me under, as if the waves had hands and meant to smother me. And then he wakes up. He says he doesn't immediately understand where he is, and only knows that he's cold. After a second, he realized that he's standing in the ocean, up to his knees in freezing water. He wants to ask Andrew about his experience to know if anything similar has ever happened, but decided against it in case the man thinks I'm just a loon. January 3rd, 1921. During the night shift, Liam hears a man calling for help. He runs downstairs and out to the shore, where he finds a man sitting on a rock. He seems frenzied and worried to death, and said that his ship is wrecked to the east. He begs Liam to get in his boat and says he will guide him to the wreck, where his crew was waiting for him. Liam agrees, waking Andrew up to man the lighthouse. They set off east, without a word being spoken between the two men. Liam rowed out to sea for some 50 to 60 minutes. He still doesn't see the wreckage, and it was too far for anyone to swim in such a cold temperature. He was starting to get a little worried that this man might have been lost. He turned around to ask him if he was sure that they were heading in the right direction, and the man was gone. Liam experienced a drop in his stomach, not unlike the feeling of being punched in the gut by a man twice my size. When he heard the sound of laughter all around him, it was then that something tipped the boat over, and he was pushed into the freezing winter ocean. After a moment of shock, Liam managed to fix the boat and climbed back in. While he rowed back, he found that he longer liked the soft silence of waves that once brought me such peace of mind. They now bring me memories of that shrill laughter. October 16th, 1921. He had the nightmare again. Was up to his chest in water when he woke up. When Andrew asked him what he was doing, he told him that he'd been feeling feverish and needed to cool off. He feels a bit worried about himself. He's been hearing that woman screaming again. February 2nd, 1922. While Liam was cleaning the outhouse, he noticed a man standing on the roof of the keeper's quarters through the window. Of course, he thought it was Andrew, worried that something bad might have happened. He made his way over. With the low light of the morning sun peeking over the horizon, he'd mistaken the man's dark apparition to be a shadow. But as he grew nearer, he saw that it wasn't a shadow at all, but it was darkness that had swallowed light in the form of a man. He watched as the sun finally climbed up into the sky, and within 5 minutes, the darkness had faded into nothing. It was after this experience that my grandfather had decided that enough was enough and left. Those were just a few of many experiences that he had in Norway, and the rest of his life he refused to talk about it. After the last entry in the journal, which documented his trek into Kansas and thus a new beginning, he never mentioned the lighthouse again. Not in any of the journals or in the personal ones. His last words on the subject, written on April 24th, 1922, were, "The mentioning of such an evil place would surely be the end of me, and anyone else who heard the words." In 1936, my Uncle James drowned in a lake. They found him on the morning of October 16th, still in his pajamas, when I was a teenager. When I was a teenager, I asked my grandmother if that had been the reason why she and Grandpa had been divorced. She said no. She said the reason was because, as he pulled their son's little body out of the water, and with any future mention of the son's death, Liam could not stop laughing. Cave diving is one of the most extreme, dangerous sports a person can partake in. It's a thrilling experience, that's for sure, but it comes with a cost. You need to be extremely qualified to cave dive. It requires hundreds, if not thousands of hours of experience before a person can be confident enough to explore the depths of the underwater cave system. Some caves are miles long, and if you get lost, you can easily die. Divers have utilities to assist them, but anything can happen. Unfortunately, Getting lost is very easy if you aren't aware of your surroundings. Once you begin to lose your sense of up and down, left or right, you will go into a panic. If not careful, you will kick up underwater particles and obscure your vision from slight to none. I used to think that this only happens in inexperienced divers, but it happened to me. It was 2007, Texas. Me and my diving partner were going to try out a fairly popular diving hall, a pretty common spot for young adults and teenagers to hang out at. We had spent months preparing for this dive, and everything was set in place. When we arrived, there were at least a dozen young adults swimming in that pool. They were psyched that we were going to explore it. We told them about the diving hall and how this was actually one of the most dangerous caves in the country, claiming no less than 8 lives since its discovery. We weren't planning on going too far. The cave's networks branch out for miles. It was around 1:00 p.m. when we began our journey down the hall. We first did a small test run, descending about 30 feet down, just to test our equipment. The cave is completely vertical for the first 50 feet or so. Then it begins to curve to the right. It's quite narrow too, about 7 feet across. Once our gear checked out, we began our full expedition. At 50 feet, the cave actually gets a little bit wider, which gives us a lot of room for movement. I went down the hole first, and my partner followed. The shadows from the kids on the surface were painted on the walls beneath us. We finally reached where the cave begins to take a slight curve. At this point, there was lots of sun shining through the water. The water there is incredibly clear. There is another vertical drop at this point. As we go deeper, the sunlight begins to dim and the darkness begins to take over. We finally arrived to the deepest point of the cave, about 137 feet down. Here, there were 2 possibilities, Tunnel A and Tunnel B. We decided on Tunnel B a while back because that's the more popular route. Before the entrances, there is a sign warning inexperienced divers not to explore any further, or it could result in death. I knew there was something wrong right away. There were dust particles in the water. As we swam deeper, it was beginning to be obscure to my vision, so I signaled my partner to head back. Right then, my vision was completely masked in dust. I couldn't see anything. I had to activate my BC, my buoyancy control device, in order to keep my center of gravity. At this point, I had no idea where my partner was. I waited in patience for the particles to hopefully settle, but there weren't. It had been about 10 minutes waiting before I knew we had to get out of there. I finally found my partner after searching my perimeter and attempted to motion him in the direction that I believed led up to the main entrance of the cave. We both hugged the walls until we reached the guide, which is a rope to guide lost divers, and then found an even narrower part of the cave. It was the wrong way, but at least at this point, I knew that we had gone the wrong way and followed the wrong direction to go exit. We found the exit eventually and re-entered back into the clear water again. I had about 5 minutes on my oxygen left, and my partner had 9. This was due to releasing my BC earlier on. It uses gas from your tank to expand. When we surfaced, we were both shaken up as hell. We have no idea what caused that huge particle storm in the water. There are fish, there are sharks, but we don't believe there was enough to kick up that much dirt around. I do know now that we were not fully equipped for this situation, and any future cave dives will have to be proper equipment. We've gone a couple of dives since, but I don't think either one of us have had such a close call after that. Thanks for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to let me know down in the comment section. Make sure to like, comment, and if you're new to this channel and you liked what you heard, make sure to subscribe. We're doing nothing but growing. If you would like, make sure to check out the channel members section, where I post bonus content, bloopers, stuff like that. Also, make sure to check out the links in the description, like my Twitter, my Instagram. Everything like that is in there, including my Gmail if you would like to submit a story. I would love to tell some subscriber stories. But other than that, stay safe, stay scary, and I'll see you